The average American family owns roughly $300,000 worth of possessions: furniture, tools, keepsakes, boxes from a move that never got unpacked. And across the country, more than 1 in 3 of those families is currently paying a stranger every single month just to hold on to things they already own and rarely ever use. That single fact is the entire self-storage industry in one sentence. It is not selling you a product, it is selling you permission to keep procrastinating. And somehow, that idea has quietly built one of the most profitable corners of American real estate, worth more than $50 billion a year, spread across over 60,000 facilities. There are more self-storage locations in the United States right now than every Subway, every Dollar General, and every CVS combined. Think about that for a second. An industry built almost entirely on stuff nobody's using has more physical locations than the country's biggest fast food chain and its biggest pharmacy chain put together. So, how did a business built on empty concrete rooms become this large, this quiet, and this quietly profitable? To understand that, you have to start with what this business actually looks like from the inside, because it is almost nothing like what people assume. Picture a rectangular metal building divided into dozens or hundreds of individual units, each one locked behind a roll-up door. There's no product being manufactured, there is no inventory being sold. There is, in most cases, barely anyone even working there. A facility with 300 units can often be run by 1 or 2 employees, sometimes part-time, sometimes managing the entire operation remotely from an app on their phone. That detail alone should already be raising questions, because in almost every other industry, labor is the biggest expense a business owner has to fight against. In self-storage, labor barely shows up on the spreadsheet at all. Now let's talk about what it actually costs to build one of these places, because this is where the story starts getting interesting. Constructing a mid-sized facility in an urban area can run anywhere from $200 to $300 per square foot once you account for land, permits, and construction. A facility with 50,000 square feet of rentable space, in other words, a fairly average-sized project, can require an initial investment north of a few $100,000 just to get the doors open, and that's before a single unit has ever been rented. This is not a business you casually stumble into with a weekend project budget. The barrier to entry is real. The permitting process alone can take over a year in many cities, and most operators go through a stabilization period lasting 1 to 3 years before the facility is even running at a healthy occupancy rate. But here's the part that explains why so much institutional money has poured into this industry over the last 2 decades. Once that facility is built and occupied, the ongoing cost to keep it running is remarkably, almost unfairly low. There's no perishable inventory sitting in a warehouse depreciating in value. There's no fleet of delivery trucks burning through fuel and maintenance budgets. There's no team of 40 employees needing healthcare and payroll every 2 weeks. A well-run facility, once stabilized, can operate at profit margins between 55 and 70% of revenue. Let that number sit for a moment, because in almost any other sector of the economy, a margin like that would be considered borderline impossible. Restaurants fight for margins in the single digits. Even successful retail operations are often thrilled with 15 or 20%. Self-storage facilities, when run properly, are regularly clearing more than half of every dollar that comes in the door as pure profit. So where does all that revenue actually come from? Most people assume it's just simple math, a 10 by 10 unit rented at a certain price multiplied by the number of units in the building. And that's true as far as it goes. National revenue per square foot currently sits somewhere between $14 and $22 annually, depending on the market, with premium urban facilities commanding rates on the higher end and rural locations settling closer to $8 to $12. But if you stop the story there, you're missing the mechanism that makes this business genuinely brilliant, and it has almost nothing to do with attracting new customers. It has to do with the customers who are already there. Here's what almost nobody outside the industry understands about how these facilities actually generate their growth. The single largest, most reliable profit lever available to a self-storage operator isn't marketing. It isn't discounts. It's raising the rent on people who are already renting from you, and doing it in a way that barely anyone notices or fights back against. Industry data shows existing customer rate increases, sometimes called ECRI, are worth tens of thousands of dollars in additional annual profit at a single mid-sized facility, often more impact than anything else an operator could do. Why does this work so well? Because moving your stored belongings is high friction. It's annoying. It requires a truck, a free weekend, and enough motivation to sort through boxes you haven't opened in years. When a facility raises your monthly rate by 8, 10, sometimes 15%, the psychological math most customers run in their head isn't, "Is this fair?" It's, "Is this annoying enough to make me rent a truck and move all this somewhere else?" For most people, the answer is no. And that single behavioral quirk, multiplied across an entire industry, is arguably the most powerful profit engine self-storage has ever discovered. This is also where the psychology behind this entire business gets genuinely fascinating, because self-storage isn't really selling space, it's selling delayed decisions. Nobody rents a storage unit because they've made a plan for their belongings. They rent one because they haven't. A divorce happens and neither person wants to deal with their furniture yet. A parent passes away and the family isn't ready to go through a lifetime of belongings. A move happens and the new place isn't quite big enough, so the extra boxes go into storage just for now. That phrase, "just for now," is doing an enormous amount of financial work in this industry, because "just for now" has a strange habit of turning into years. And every month that phrase stays true, the facility collects another payment for storing indecision. That single dynamic explains something that surprises almost everyone who studies this industry for the first time. Self-storage doesn't behave like most other businesses during a recession. It behaves almost the opposite way. During the 2008 financial crisis, while most commercial real estate was collapsing, self-storage occupancy actually increased in many markets. Why? Because recessions create exactly the kind of life disruptions that drive people into storage units in the first place. Foreclosures mean families need somewhere to put their belongings while they downsize. Job losses mean people are moving in with relatives. And relatives' homes are rarely built to absorb an entire extra household's worth of furniture. The very chaos that destroys other businesses tends to feed this one. Of course, none of this means the business is bulletproof, and it's worth being honest about where the real risk sits. The biggest danger in self-storage isn't a lack of demand, it's oversupply. Because the profit margins are so attractive, developers have flooded certain markets, particularly across the Sun Belt, with new facilities faster than population growth could absorb them. When that happens, occupancy drops, operators start competing on price, and those beautiful 55 to 70% margins can compress fast. Several markets experienced exactly this in the years leading up to 2024, when a wave of new construction outpaced demand and forced operators into aggressive move-in promotions just to keep units filled. The lesson embedded in that story is simple. This business rewards patience and discipline and punishes anyone who assumes rapid growth will continue in a straight line forever. There's also a quieter revenue stream running underneath everything we've already covered, one that most casual observers never notice because it's designed to be invisible. Tenant insurance programs, required by many facilities as a condition of renting a unit, often carry profit margins between 30 and 60% on the premium alone. Administrative fees, late fees, lock sales, and packing supplies add another meaningful slice of revenue that costs the operator almost nothing to provide. Even truck rental partnerships, where a facility earns a small commission every time a customer rents a moving truck through them, contribute a stream of pure profit with zero additional overhead. Individually, these add-ons might only represent 8 to 15% of total revenue, but because they arrive at almost 100% margin, they often contribute a disproportionate share of the facility's actual profit. Put all of these pieces together and the picture of this industry looks completely different from the one most people carry around in their heads. It's not simply a landlord renting out empty rooms, it's a business built around 4 compounding advantages happening at once: extraordinarily low ongoing labor and operating costs, a customer base that is behaviorally resistant to leaving even when prices rise, a recession-resistant demand cycle rooted in human indecision rather than economic prosperity, and the collection of near invisible add-on revenue streams, layered quietly on top of the base rent. This is exactly why the largest players in the space, companies like Public Storage, Extra Space Storage, and CubeSmart, have spent the last 2 decades aggressively buying up smaller, independently owned facilities. Institutional money doesn't chase boring businesses for no reason. It chases businesses with predictable cash flow, low volatility, and structural advantages that are difficult for newcomers to replicate quickly, especially now that land costs and permitting timelines have made building new facilities from scratch dramatically more expensive than it used to be. And that's really the story hiding behind every anonymous metal building sitting off a highway exit, the ones you've probably driven past 1,000 times without a second thought. It's not simply a place where people put things they don't need anymore. It's a business engineered around one of the most consistent truths about human behavior. We would almost always rather pay to postpone a decision than actually make it. Somewhere in America right now, someone is standing in front of a storage unit they've been paying for since a move 3 years ago, still telling themselves they'll deal with it soon. And that sentence, repeated by millions of people every single month, is quietly one of the most reliable profit machines in the entire American economy.